Hey, hello, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I hope you're all doing better than I am at the moment. I'm coming down with a really bad case of the cold at the moment, so you have to excuse my deep voice today. But somehow I hopefully gonna get through this. This is the second episode in my new started series of the best albums of 1984. I didn't tell you this the last time, but it's actually going to be 10 episodes, so it's going to be my top 10 of my favorite albums from 1984. And if you haven't already guessed it from my thumbnail or the title of this video or even the background here, we're going to talk about Bananarama. And more specifically, their 1984 self-titled album, Bananarama. Yes, this is just like with my previous video with Kim Wilde, the Teasers and Dares album. This is where I discovered Bananarama. Absolutely. But the year before this, they released their first album called Deep Sea Skiving. We're not going to go into details about this one. I'm just going to say that I wasn't really aware of this album at the time. I probably heard some of the singles from this one on the radio at the time, but it wasn't really anything that caught my ear for real. But things were going to change with the new album in 1984. They didn't have the huge international hits from their first album, but that is also going to change with this one. But before we go into the album itself, I just want to talk about the single that was released, the first single from this album that was actually released in June of 1983. And it's this one behind me, Cruel Summer. And this is probably one of the most the top song of Bananarama still today. I think most people are very familiar with this one, with a great hook to the melody, and the lyrics all about being stranded in the big city during the summer when everyone else gone away, and it's just the heat is just killing you, basically. No, it's a great summer track, and like I said, it's probably one of the most popular Bananarama tracks throughout the years since it was released. Anyhow, released, like I said, in June of 1983, and it became a great hit for them. It peaked at number 8 in the UK charts at the time, and I have to read down here on my notes, in Sweden it peaked at number 33 on the single charts. And another example, Canada's dance chart, it peaked at number 2. In Poland, peaked at number 4, and in the Netherlands, number 6. And that's just some of them. And Billboard Hot 100, I think they peaked at number 2. Was really popular there, but it didn't peak until 1984, if I'm not mistaken, because of its inclusion in the Karate Kid film that came out in 1984. It was featured in the film, but if I'm not mistaken, it was never featured on the soundtrack itself, which is really weird. But it helped to push the single and made Bananarama famous in the States as well, so we're really happy about that. So this is where the international stardom really kicked off. And like I said, what a great single. I love the hook for this one. They collaborated with Jolie and Swain, the producers, for their first record, Deep Sea Skiving. And for this one, they called them back. They were really happy with the collaboration. So they went on working with Jolie and Swain again. And Jolie and Swain had already written the music for Cruel Summer before, and they actually offered it to Imagination. And you know, Imagination, they had a huge hit with Just an Illusion, I think it was in 1982. But they refused that one, and I think Bananarama is thankful for that one. They really liked the Bananarama, so they sat down, started doing some lyrics for this one, and it just turned out to pop brilliance. And what I'm holding in my hand is, of course, the 12-inch for this one, which is a brilliant one. And even if it doesn't say it here on the back, it's actually a bit of an extended version of Cruel Summer here. And also here on the B-side, you see 2 more trucking favorites. And it's a summer dub, which actually Cruel Summer, the dub version. And then this track called Cairo, which is actually a cover of a Joella Blade song from the late 70s. And I do have to excuse my pronunciation there, but I think her name was Joella Blade. Yeah, and they do a really good work of that track, a really reggae flavor track, a very summery track as well. So it goes very well with the rest of the theme. And you might wonder why the trucking theme on this one. Same goes with the front cover. They're posing with a rig of sorts. Well, the video was shot in New York in the summer, and it features a lot of trucks, they being sort of, I don't know, truck drivers or mechanics really jumping around in dungarees, and that became huge fashion statement as well. And I think Dexy Midnight Runners might have beat them to that one, but it was a big thing in the early 80s, wearing dungarees, at least for a while. So yeah, we're going to talk more about the video later on, but this was the thing that kicked things off for them. Then we had to wait until February of 1984 until the next single from this upcoming album was released, and that was Robert De Niro's Waiting. And I happen to have that back here. I don't have the normal picture sleeve edition of this one. I have to hunt that down at some point, but it's basically this. This is the sleeve for it. Now, this is one that I bought at the time on green vinyl. It's the same 12-inch. And you can buy this in 3 different editions. I think there was 3 different vinyl colors as well. This is a green one, as you can see, with Shibon Faye there in the middle, on the huge center label of this one. A great one. Another extended track of Robert De Niro's Waiting. And I'm not going to go into analysis about all the songs for the singles or even on the albums. I'm just going to mention in passing really what they're about, because I am at the moment doing a special around Bananarama and each of the albums throughout the year. So it's going to be a lengthy series in 2025. So I don't want to really repeat myself too much. So I'm just going to mention that Robert De Niro's Waiting was said at the time when it was released in 1984 that it was about sexual violence against someone. Let's put it that way. But I think the Bananarama did debunk this in 2010 or 2011 or something like that, when they said it's actually about hero worship. And of course, it's, if you listen to the lyrics, it's all about not being able to go out as a woman when it gets dark because you're afraid you're going to get attacked or whatever. So you rather stay home and watch a film with Robert De Niro, perhaps. So yeah, that's all I'm going to say about this one. I'm going to have a bigger deep dive into this one when I do my special. And yeah, I love the vocals on this one, and like I said, the whole composition of it as well, the sounds, all of it is just great. Yeah, that was Robert De Niro's Waiting, and that one did really well in the charts as well. It peaked at number 3 in the UK charts, for example, and if we look at the US Billboard Hot 100, it peaked at number 95. So it wasn't as successful as the previous single, but still it ended up on the charts there. People were aware of them in the States. In South Africa, for example, it was popular. It peaked at number 7. In Switzerland at number 8, in Germany at number 7. So yeah, once again, the Germans have good taste in music. We now move on to April of 1984, and it's time for Bananarama to release their self-titled second album, Bananarama. And it's been a labor of love for them. Basically what they did was, when they released their first album in 1983, they went straight into the studio to start working on tracks for this one. And like we already said, Cool Summer was the first one they worked on. But they took their time to really craft this album together with Jolie and Swain, of course, to make it something they really wanted. And of course there's a lot of pressure going in doing your second album, any album I would imagine, but especially if you had a first album where you had 1 or 2 hits that were huge and you have to live up to those hits. But Bananarama really didn't have that. What I said in the beginning, they did have a couple of hits, but they weren't huge hits, so that was at least off their back. But like I said, there's always a pressure going, and I can imagine doing an album. But yeah, so they took their time crafting this one, and it really, really shows. You can hear it in this one. Bananarama had the very unique style. I mean, I would say that style that we got accustomed to for the first couple of years, at least, in Bananarama's career. This is the album that established that sound. They had a really unique sound to begin with, even on the first album. A lot of melancholy in the melodies. I love the lyrics on that one. But for this one, they took it up to the next step. And something else that's really unique with them as well, they don't have a lead singer among the three of them. They all sing together, and that is something really, really unique that creates this Bananarama sound, as I called it. It was more common back in the 60s with what they call the girl groups, for example, Supremes and all of that. But still today, it's not very common that you hear three girls singing the lead vocals at once and harmonizing with each other the way that Bananarama did. So they had that going for themselves, but they really polished that formula. And this one is just a great, great example of how to do an album, really. And a more mature album as well, if I may say so. Like I said, a lot of melancholy melodies, great lyrics on the first album, but this one took it to the next level, even lyric-wise. More conscious about the world around them, highlighting poverty and sexism and all of that throughout this album. So yeah, a really, really good one. And like I said earlier, I'm not going to dissect every single track here because I'm probably going to do that in my special in some way or another. So we're just going to go through the track listing here to begin with. And we start out with the first track on the A side, which is Cruel Summer. We already talked about that, great opener. And then we go into a track called Rough Justice, which happened to be the third single from the album, and we have that here behind me. This one was dedicated to their road manager, Thomas Riley, who was killed by a British soldier in 1983 in Belfast. And actually, the whole album itself is dedicated to Thomas Riley. So you can see up here, it says, the album is dedicated to our friend Thomas Kidso Riley. Rest in peace. Yeah, so Rough Justice is... well, the whole album is dedicated to him, but it's not about Thomas Riley per se. It's all about the injustices in the world. And if you bought the 7-inch, for example, which I happen to have back here as well, you also got the lyrics on the backside, and the same goes for the 12-inch. And there's some really poignant lyrics in this one. The refrain, for example, or the chorus goes, innocent people walking by, no time to smile before they die. Don't call that justice. Children are starving on the street, another one disappearing every week. Don't call that justice. And yeah, so these were the things that they were highlighting in the songs, and I think by printing the lyrics here, they wanted people to understand what they were singing about, because the track itself is not somber, it's not a slow track per se, it's a pretty good pop song with rather serious lyric behind it. So I think that's just what they wanted to highlight here, because going into listening to a Bananarama song, you might be used to hearing Cruel Summer, for example, or even Robert De Niro's Waiting. And this one might sound the same, but the lyrics are quite different. And we already highlighted some of the issues they raised on Robert De Niro's Waiting there, with the insecurity and perhaps the sexism targeted against women there. But this is the serious one for them. So I think that's why they wanted the lyrics here as well. And very nice cover for this single, by the way. So yeah, as you can see here, the two different ones. The gold tinted one here, and with a different background, of course. And you got the blue sky there, skyline as well, same on as this one. And if you're just going to talk about the covers for this one, I don't have many Bananarama 7 inches left in my collection, perhaps just a handful of them throughout the years. But this one I kept because it has a lenticular cover. And that's something they were good at, or I would say London Records, which were their record company at the time, were good at releasing different variants. We're all complaining about the variants today with all these artists that are releasing their album with an alternate cover, 3 alternate covers, and different colored vinyl records and all of that. It was just the same back then, really, with a lot of artists. And Bananarama and the record company was guilty about this as well. And I forgot to say that about Robert De Niro's Waiting, because I started talking about how this is a green variant with Siobhan's face on the other side. But you could also buy a second one with Karen's face on it and a different colored vinyl. I can't remember what color it was. And then another one, of course, with Sarah on it in a different color vinyl. It was the same 12-inch, really, but for the completist, you want it all, right? And the same went for this one as well. I can't remember with Cruel Summer if there was something like that. It probably was. I should have looked into it. But with Rough Justice, there was this one with the lenticular cover here. You can see the background is moving, not the girls. But yeah, it was cool at the time, and I still think so, really. So yeah, that happened as well with London Records and Bananarama. But yeah, a great single. For this one, you had a B-side called Live Now. And it's a non-album track, actually. And it's not one of my favorite ones. I don't think it's bad, but it's one of the weaker tracks. And usually with Bananarama, I thought they always had really good B-sides, like Cairo, the cover on that one, for example. And I actually forgot in my haze, I blame my cold for this, to talk about the B-side for Robert De Niro's Waiting. There is a track called Push. And it's also a non-album track, and a really good one. I really like that one. All about pushing drugs, really, and what drugs, how they might affect you, and yeah, all that. So a lot of social issues going on here, right? And they're informing you about that. Another thing with the Robert De Niro 12-inch is that there is an unnamed track that starts out the B-side called Link. We didn't know that at the time, but there is something working as a segue into Push on the 12-inch. It's called Link. It's a very short track with very sparse lyrics on it, but it's a wonderful song. And I think if they elaborated on that one, made it a bit longer, worked more on it perhaps, it would have been a great album inclusion as well. But yeah, it ended up as a B-side, an unnamed B-side, that is. So I just wanted to mention that because I just realized I forgot to say that earlier. But yeah, let's move on from Rough Justice. We're going to talk more about the singles, by the way, because to round things off here, I'm going to talk some about the videos they released for the singles as well. But the third track on the album here is King of the Jungle. And that is probably my favorite track on this album. And it's all about really being in gangs and how that might affect you, the bad side of joining gangs in the big city, really. But a wonderful track, great melody, and harmonizing is as good as ever when it comes to Siobhan, Sarah, and Karen. Really love that one, King of the Jungle. And then we had the fourth track here, Dream Baby. And Dream Baby, I think it's the weakest track of this album. It's one of those tracks that, because I've been listening to this one so much throughout the years, and every time it comes on, it's like, oh yeah, that one. So it's not a bad one, but it's a middle of the album track, really. And that's exactly what it is as well, of course. But yeah, they do a good job on it, but it's not one that really sticks in my mind, at least. So yeah. Dream Baby. It's actually a cover of a track that a group called Six Said Red did at some point. I never heard of them before, and up to this point, when I was preparing for this episode, I wasn't aware that this one was actually a cover. But yeah, it is. It's written by Six Red Said, which was Cindy Ecstasy. I have to look at my notes here, and Rick Holiday from B Movie. And B Movie was a great group that I have a couple of singles from in my collection as well. I really liked B Movie, but I had no idea that he had another group here together with Cindy Ecstasy, which I have a sneaking suspicion is not her birth name. But anyhow, she was from New York and had featured on Soft Cell's Torch, the single Torch in 1982. Well, as a background singer, then I assume. And they had a big underground hit with a track called Shake It Right on Sire Records in 1984, and that was produced by Flood and Cabaret Voltaire. Another connection that should have made me picked up on this name Six Said Red, because Cabaret Voltaire is one of my favorite groups from the industrial, or you might call it the synth era of the 1980s. But yeah, it is a cover of a Six Said Red song, Dream Baby. But that doesn't matter. It's still my least favorite track on this one. Like I said, when it comes on, it was like, oh yeah, it's that one. Not a bad one, but yeah, middle of the road. Then we move on to Hotline to Heaven, and that is the fourth single from this album. And where do we have Hotline to Heaven? Here we go. This is one I only have on a 7-inch, really. And that is a shame, because I wanted the extended versions as well, not only the single versions, but the extended ones as well. I never came across it, and at the time I never saw it in my local record shops. This was the only one I could get my hands on, and that was years after. This is actually the single with the free Jigsaw. I was just talking about the many different iterations of their singles, and this is one of them for Hotline to Heaven, which actually have a jigsaw here. See if I can. Yeah, there it is. It's the cover for the single as a jigsaw, which is quite a novel idea, I think. So yeah, just like with the lenticular cover for Rough Justice, I just had to get this one as well. Love it. Yeah, so back to the single itself, Hotline to Heaven. It's about drug use and how you actually, by using drugs, speed up things to get a hotline to heaven. Yeah, it's not a good path to be on, really. And this is another standout track for me on the album, I have to say. A really, really good one. I love the hook for the refrain on this one. The lyrics are really good. Everything about it is just great with Hotline to Heaven. And once again, I have to blame my cold here, but Hotline to Heaven reached the peak of number 58 on the UK charts. It didn't really chart anywhere else, though this is the lowest rated singles to date for Bananarama in 1984. I couldn't find any other chart entries, really, so we'll have to go with the UK charts, peaking at number 58, which is a shame, because like I said, this is one of my favorite tracks. I can't imagine anyone saying, this is just a meh track, but yeah, apparently people did. Yeah, so I was blaming my cold here just now because I also forgot to say that the Rough Justice that we talked about here, the chart positioning for that one, and I had it written down here. It charted really well, peaked at number 23 in the UK single charts, in the Netherlands at number 16, and Belgium in number 19. And I did another example here for Sweden because I'm originally from Sweden, and I've been talking about the Poporama charts where it actually spent 2 weeks as well, so it did quite well as well. But it was the first two singles, Cruel Summer and Robert De Niro's Waiting, that was the big hits for them, of course. But yeah, I just forgot to mention that as well. Yeah, blaming my cold. Then we go on with the next track here, From Hotline to Heaven to The State I'm In. And The State I'm In, it's another really good track that was actually considered to be a single track as well. But it ended up on this one as a B-side, funnily enough. So State I'm In was supposed to be the fourth single, but things were changed. I don't know if it was a record company or the Ramas themselves that said, no, we'll go for Hotline to Heaven. I think Hotline to Heaven is the better track. It's got a really great hook, like I said. Love the melody in it. Love the voice. Everything is good with that. State I'm In, also good, but not as good as this one. So intended as a single, they actually shot a video for that one as well. We're going to talk more about that in just a short while here. But yeah, B-side on this one. Yeah, so another catchy track from Bananarama, State I'm In. And then we have the seventh track on this album on the B-side here, because we already flipped this one over if we play the vinyl record. Robert De Niro's Waiting. And we already talked about that one. Great one. One of the classic Bananarama songs, right? And then we round off the whole album with Through a Child's Eyes. And that is the only proper ballad or slow song on this album. And I might say it's one of the greatest slow songs that Bananarama ever did. They hadn't made that many slow songs or ballads throughout their career, but this one stands out among the few they've done. Really good one. Another one with a great message through it. And like I said, if I sound a bit scattered, it's not only because of my cold here, but it's also that I really want to talk more about the lyrics in these ones. But like I said at the beginning, I don't want to repeat myself for the special that I'm doing at the moment for Bananarama. So if you're curious, look forward to those specials, I would say, for each and every album of Bananarama in 2025, where I talk more about this. But yeah, a really good closer to this album. Round things off perfectly, and it is a perfect album in my eyes, this one, even if the only one I really mentioned is a bit of a forgetful track in my case. It's a Dream Baby, but it's still a good track, and it does fit in with the rest of them on this album. And if we go into the album design itself, if you bought this one on vinyl back in the day, you can see they got some embossed texturing up here, for example, and down here as well. So there was a lot of attention paid to the cover as well. It's just not just a plain cover, and I love the colors here, and the photo is great of them as well. And you got all three of them here as well. And when I bought this one, I think the initial releases did come with the poster as well. So, and I never hung this one on my wall back in the day, but it did come with the poster. But I'm very tempted today to actually frame this one and hang it on the wall. And it also functioned as a huge lyrics sheet as well for the songs. Yeah. And some credits there as well. It's a bit awkward to have this one in front of you and listening to the album and try to sing along, but yeah, It works. It works. Okay, let's now talk just briefly about another non-album track that was recorded and released by Bananarama in 1984, and that is The Wildlife. This was actually released as a single, but only in the US, Canada, Australia, and Japan, if I'm not mistaken, for some reason. It was included on a soundtrack for a movie by the same name, The Wildlife, and I think it was Christopher Penn and Eric Stoltz was in some of the starring roles in that one. Never seen it, and I don't think I ever heard of it back then either, so it could be a case where it was more popular in these territories that I just mentioned, so that's why the single was only released in those territories. But it's a shame, because it's a great track that's very much fits in with the rest of the tracks on this album, and I do have a sneaky suspicion it was recorded during the same sessions. It was just omitted from the album, or it was intended as a single all the time, who knows. But at the time, it was a single only in those territories, and it's something that is sorely lacking from my collection here. I do have, I would say, most of the singles. I have the singles from the 1984 Bananarama era. Well, I'm missing Hotline to Heaven on a 12-inch, but that one is fairly easy to find. I could pick it up in the second-hand stores at some point, I think, here in the UK. But for The Wildlife, because it was only released in those territories, it's highly unlikely I will find a copy of that one just lying around in a second-hand shop anywhere. So I might go to Discogs some days, but it's one of my grails. It's not that I don't have the track, because if you picked up this one, for example, I think this one came out in 2018. It's like a CD book kind of thing. It does include two CDs with the full album, of course, all the mixes, 7 inches, unreleased mixes, and a DVD as well with some of the performances on Top of the Pops, for example, and all the videos as well. A great issue. So if you're curious at all on this album and want it all the mixes, all the unreleased stuff as well, this is the one to go for. It's out of print nowadays, but I think you can pick it up at a fairly reasonable price, secondhand as well. Or hopefully they will reissue these ones at some point. I think they did this one. I have this one for this one, of course, and I have that for the True Confessions and Wow as well, but I never picked up the other ones at the time, and I'm a bit miffed about that, because it's a great way to have all the tracks from the different eras of this group. But when it comes to Wildlife, it was also included on this album on subsequent releases or pressings, because I think there was a demand, people wanting to hear this elusive singles in other territories. So what they did include it on subsequent pressings, like I said, but that meant they had to shorten the wonderful Hotline to Heaven on this one, because what I didn't mention before is that Hotline to Heaven on this one is just over 7 minutes long. Wonderful album version of that one, but to make room for Wildlife, they had to edit it down. I can't remember what they edited it down to, perhaps 5 minutes or something like that. But yeah. But I don't have that version of it. This is the original one I bought in 1984, so it only includes the original track listing. But if you picked up later pressings, it would include The Wildlife. What I heard is that on further pressings on this one, they actually reinstated the original edit of Hotline to Heaven and still maintained The Wildlife on it as well. So there was a way to fit more tracks on the vinyl record. Yeah, so I don't know how they did it, but they did it. And of course, if you picked up the CD versions as well, it would be included. But yeah, I want to get my hands on that one. A holy grail, if you want, when it comes to Bananarama records for me. But anyhow, yeah, it didn't chart in any other country than the US. This one, it peaked at number 70 on the US Billboard chart. the wildlife. But like I said, it's a great track. It fits in really well with the rest of the production they did in 1984. It's a good track. Then let's talk about the videos for the singles, just briefly. I just could say that Cruel Summer, I already mentioned this one, a great one. It really invokes this sweltering heat that you can experience during your stay in a city during the summer, because it was recorded in or filmed in New York during the summer as well. And if you've ever been to New York during the summer, you know, it could be really hot place to be, really sweltering. And yeah, they hang around a bunch of trucks as well. I don't really know what the trucks has to do with anything, but and in their dungarees dancing around. There's a car chase later on, or police chase I would say. They're chasing down a truck where, at least to my recollection, it was just Shibon who was sitting in that one, or was it all three of them in the truck that's being chased? Yeah, it's a fun video, a very light-hearted one, but really on the nose. And then we have Robert De Niro's Waiting, which is a very sets a really good atmosphere. You got the girls sitting singing in front of a telly. They got that TV glare in their faces while they sing it, and then someone knocks on the door and they are a bit startled. And in some sequences they are walking around dark streets and being followed by a man who I suppose would be Robert De Niro in one of his Italian roles, which to my mind, I can only remember 1900, Novecento. He spoke Italian in that one, and perhaps Once Upon a Time in America as well. I think he might have spoken some Italian in that one as well, but yeah. Anyhow, the guy in the video is nothing like Robert De Niro. He's got a fedora. He's more akin to Humphrey Bogart, might have been. But it's a very atmospheric video, and I like it as well. And a bit of a surprise ending to that one as well, if we can call it a story. And then we have Rough Justice, of course, the more serious song from this album. And the video is also more somber. Starts out at the TV station where the girls are getting ready in the makeup room, perhaps doing an interview or doing a TV performance, who knows. Anyhow, they're getting led out by someone from the TV station, and while his eyes are diverted somewhere else, they sneak in to a TV studio where there is a live feed, which for some reason the station can't just stop. So yeah, the Bananarama's message, the wonderful message from Rough Justice, is televised to the nation or the world even, who knows. And the TV station boss, I assume, is watching this from home, is basically getting a heart attack from this one, because it's outrageous, the things that they're saying. It's not really. It's a really good message, but a very serious video from the Ramas. Then we have Hotline to Heaven, which is also a serious topic when it comes to the lyrics, all about the downsides of drug use, of course. And the video itself is played out in a fictional record company, Hotline Records, where we can just assume that the record boss is a bit of a sleaze. He's might done a line or two in his office, because towards the end of the video, some angels come down from heaven to get him, because they probably OD'd on something, who knows. But I think that's the gist of it, really. But a more light-hearted video. We got the Ramas dancing around a bit and being a bit silly, but the message of a song comes through in the video, sorts. Yeah, pretty fun one. Then we have The Wildlife, the single that was only released in certain territories. The video is basically, where did I have it? Oh, here we go. I didn't see it. It's basically this photo shoot with these plaid shirts they have. It must have been filmed during the video for The Wildlife, must have been filmed during this photo shoot, because it's the same things they wear in that one, with the hats as well and everything. And they basically just jumping around, and it's intercut with scenes from the movie The Wildlife as well. So a typical song from a film, you know. might remember Into the Groove with Madonna, which had Desperately Seeking Susan in the clips from that one throughout the whole video, right? So it's that kind of video. Yeah, that's what I wanted to say. Then we have the last video that was recorded in 1984 from Bananarama, and that's a Stay Time In, the track that was supposed to be the single, but ended up on the B-side of the Hotline to Heaven instead. And this one must have been recorded at the same time as the video for the Wildlife, because it's the same outfits basically. They don't have the hats on, if I don't misremembering things, but the same plaid shirts, and they're in a bar or something like that, performing on the stage. People are dancing around, going crazy, and for some reason there's a neon sign behind them saying bananas, not Bananarama, but just bananas, which is quite funny. So it's nothing much to it. It's like, yeah, Bananarama performing in a bar. That's it. Yeah, so those were the videos. I just wanted to briefly mention them because it's a bit of a curiosity as well when it comes to the releases from an album as well. Yeah, so in conclusion, what a great album. Otherwise, it wouldn't be here in this episode, of course. According to me, this is one of the best albums of 1984. And I had so much enjoyment through listening to this record throughout the years, from the time when I bought it in 1984 and up until today. I do listen to quite a lot of these tracks still today. A classic album, you might call, from Bananarama, but like I said at the beginning of this video, this is where I believe everything was established. The way they wanted Bananarama to be conceived as, heard as, the magic formula was made through this album. And of course they changed their style throughout the years, but this is the core. This is where everything was built from, really, in my opinion. Great, great album. And it did really well as well in the charts. It peaked at number 16 in the UK album charts. In the US, it peaked at number 30 on the Billboard 200 chart. And I think in Switzerland, it made it, it peaked at number, I have to look here on my notes, number 9, and for example another country, Netherlands, peaked at number 15. It was a very popular album at the time, and it was the singles that was driving this as well. The huge success with Cruel Summer and Robert De Niro's Waiting most prominently. Yeah, so that's it. What do you think about this album? Or do you have your own list of your favorite albums from 1984? Please make sure to put them down in the comment, or ask any questions. Or in my state of mind, I probably forgot something or got something wrong. So please put it down there as well. Correct me or enlighten me, as it was. But that's it. I want to thank you all for watching yet another episode here on my channel. I will be back soon with yet another episode, another installment of the best albums of 1984. So this one takes another place in my Hall of Fame, as it was now. And I will also be back soon with the next installment in the retrospective of 1984, this time around November 1984, of course. But now I will go and cure myself, rest my voice, and hopefully I'm up to scratch later on next week, so I can continue doing what I love the most, talking about music. But until then, you also take care of yourself, and as usual, aye.